With us now, U.S. Senator Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina, author of the book America, A Redemption Story. Senator, it's always great to have you here. Thanks for coming back.
Well, thank you, guys. It's always good to be on radio with you.
So I want to start with this. Right now, somewhere, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is getting ready for a very significant speech. She's probably nervous. She's probably going through some of the lines in her head, reading through it one last time. You've been in those shoes before. People talk about it like it's sometimes a chore. It's difficult to do. It's so hard to follow up all the grandeur and the pageantry of the State of the Union address. Some people famously flop in that setting. You did very well. If you could just talk a little bit about your process getting ready to deliver that response to the president as you did, and then any advice that you would have, whether for Sarah Huckabee Sanders or future Republicans or Democrats in this position, what might some of that advice look like?
Well, Guy, if I was looking back, the 3 points I would probably make is, number one, have something good to say. Number two, say it well. And number three, know your audience. When you know your audience and you can have something good to say and you can say it well, part of saying it well is be clear and to be concise. As Republicans and as conservatives, we should always be optimistic. In spite of the challenges that we face, we know that the American people, we are always the solution. We're never the problem. We also know that under this administration, we've seen the worst of times. We've seen the worst in history in the number of illegal border crossings. If I were her, I would talk about closing the southern border to stop the fentanyl from coming across the border. I would talk about closing the southern border to stop the 4.5 million illegal immigrants coming across the border. I would then contrast that position with something optimistic, like Kim Reynolds and other governors throughout the country passing school choice, making sure that quality education is a reality in every single zip code. And then I would be clear that this administration spent $4 trillion of your money. There's no such thing as a federal dollar. They're all your dollars. And the result of that, you have less spending power because 13.5% inflation erodes your spending power. We have a better plan. It starts with turning the spigot off. Everyone can understand that. It is clear, it is concise, and it is laced with optimism.
Were you super nervous or not really?
My knees were buckling so loud I could hardly hear my heart beat, and it was pretty loud too. I got great advice, though, from Marco Rubio, who said, hydrate. You don't want to overhydrate because you won't make it through the comments. So you have to take a deep breath in and remember you've been given the privilege of speaking to the American people who love common sense. They love common ground, and they love our conservative principles. We just have to make sure that we inspire and encourage them. That's all we really need to do.
You mentioned the governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds. She gave the response last year. I think she did a good job. And then Here we are in the new year. And as you said, she has signed a really spectacular, comprehensive school choice bill into law in that state. I know some people have been very upset about it, but they had the votes to do it. They passed it. She's not the only one. This has been now a pattern sweeping the country. Republican governors have just, and state legislatures, give them credit too, the moment seems to have arrived. And I don't know if that has to do with COVID and school closures and all the harms that have been done. I'm sure that's part of it. But the Overton window of what's possible on school choice has absolutely shifted in a positive, I would say, actually progressive direction, not left-wing progress.
Right.
It's been a dream of yours. You've been talking about this for years, Senator. It's happening.
10 years I've been on this topic, and I am so thankful to see our country move in the direction. And it is, in fact, the same direction as 68% of Democrats, 67% of independents, and over 70% of Republicans all agree on some form of school choice. The only folks in the country and leadership who seem to disagree with it is the Biden administration. That is a place where they're trying to shut down charter schools. But thank God Almighty for folks like Kim Reynolds. And frankly, even in my home state of South Carolina, for the first time, our state Senate, led by Shane Massey, just passed school choice out of the state Senate for the first time, I believe, ever. So we're seeing momentum because good leaders understand that good kids in every zip code deserve access to the American dream. And, Guy, here's the good news. It's no longer the color of your skin. It's not whether you're black or white that determines the outcome in America. It's the quality of your education. We can make sure that every single child in the nation has a chance to succeed.
There was a very disturbing event in Memphis recently. I know that you've been talking about it. You've commented on it. I know some people rushed to racialize it immediately. Some people who are hostile to police decided to paint with a broad brush, as they so often do after these excesses, and this was a very bad one in Memphis. But it has sparked renewed interest in your push with Senator Booker on police reform. I know you tried in the past. It ultimately hit an impasse, and you were unable to get to a final conclusion. I know the Democrats were filibustering some of your ideas and that sort of thing. If you just want to comment maybe on the incident, but moving forward on what you're trying to renew here in the legislative process, is there any reason to believe that things could end differently this time, given, I would say, some of the really ugly political games, frankly, that they played last time?
Exactly. And, Guy, you hit the nail on the head. Last time, our vice president stood up and walked out of the room. She said, if we're here to negotiate, count me out. 6 of us in the room trying to finish the bill. The good news is her departure made it clear that the Democrats cared more about the issue than the solution. What we saw in Memphis was an atrocity. It was murder, but it should not reflect on law enforcement whole. Tonight, my guest at the State of the Union is a guy named Anthony Sampson. He is a South Carolina law enforcement agent, happens to be African American, and he represents the best wearing the badge. As I work through police reform, the one thing I will not do is question and or accept anything around qualified immunity. I will not ask you to give up your livelihood, your home, your pension in order to make life better for someone else. That's just unconscionable. So when the Democrats put things like that on the table, the only thing to do is to walk away. A bad deal is unacceptable. So if we're going to talk about the duty to intervene, if we're going to talk about more funding for body-worn cameras, if we're going to talk about more training, more resources, and better officers, count me in. As long as law enforcement stands by our legislation, we have an opportunity. I met with them today. They are excited about a lot of the legislation, and I won't give on the parts that make their jobs even harder.
Yeah, because, I mean, frankly, in some of these large cities in particular, it seems like the quote-unquote reforms are going in not just the wrong direction, but genuinely insane directions where the police literally can't do their jobs, and they're decriminalizing crime, and you can't pursue suspects. I mean, it's wild. You know, D.C., I mean, some of the worst quote-unquote reforms, they almost read like a cartoon character of the far left. That's what they just passed here in D.C.
Absolutely. One of the things we have to realize is that recruiting is down significantly. In South Carolina, 1 out of 4 law enforcement positions still goes vacant because defund the police, blame the police, disrespect the police has a massive impact on recruiting. When the mayor of D.C. tries to veto legislation around crime, as a progressive mayor, that tells you how bad it's gotten in Washington, D.C. Our citizens deserve better, and we can give them better. That starts by refunding the police, respecting the police, and thanking God for the best wearing the badge.
You, of course, are from the Palmetto State, a South Carolinian, and one of your fellow South Carolinians is going to make some significant news in just about 1 week. The former governor of your state, Nikki Haley, I know you guys know each other quite well. She's going to announce for president. I wonder what you think of her and that reported development that's coming down the pike.
Nikki Haley is a powerful, very constructive person who wants good for our country. I wish her all the good health and good campaign that she can find. We need as many good voices in this race as we possibly can have. I look forward to seeing what the American people are thinking, and I look forward to that conversation.
And on a similar note, people have, of course, pointed out your travel schedule. It's a couple states on that list that are notable in terms of where they land in the calendar, the nominating calendar for the presidency. Of course, your state is a huge deal on that front, too. The speculation is mounting that you might be thinking about running. I know people have been asking you this question now for years. Seems like, at least for now, it's more of a listening tour. What's your thought process there?
Prayer is a big part of my process for making any major decisions. I'm a big fan of the concept that as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens the other. And so good counsel is another part of it. And number three, it's understanding and appreciating where the American people are and where we're going as a country. I'm inspired and encouraged about the future of this nation, not because of who's in the White House, but because of who's in every house. We have strong, powerful mothers who are working their butts off, making sure that the ends meet. We have good fathers who are out there going the extra mile, making sure that they are able to provide for their families. If we keep the mission first, if we keep the mission of America first, the title should matter less. So my focus will be on spreading my mission of opportunity and hope. And if I have an opportunity to do so, we'll see what the people say in response.
One last question. We have about a minute left. The Democrats are moving to make South Carolina first in line when it comes to their nominating process for the presidency. That's something that Joe Biden has asked for. Obviously, that state was huge for him back in 2020. As a South Carolinian, what do you think of what they're doing on the other side of the aisle, really elevating your state in that way?
I think we overlook the incredible power of the first in the nation, Iowa having the first in the nation caucus. I do think the diversity of the state in the way that people think and the diversity of the workforce, of opportunity, it is a good place to start this entire presidential conversation. I do like the first in the South, remaining South Carolina. On our side, we decided to do so. I think there's no doubt that the politics on the left are more tribal and more racial, and so they want to make sure that they set the president up for success. I think it's a mistake on their side. You have to compete for every single vote in this nation and not just set yourself up for success by starting in a state where Jim Clyburn and others bailed out his presidency.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think that's some insight there that perhaps some Democrats would actually agree with. Conversation perhaps to continue another day. Tim Scott, U.S. Senator from South Carolina, Republican, our guest. Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you, Guy. Have a great day.